Tennis great Martina Navratilova once said, "Disability is a matter of perception. If you can do one thing well, you'll be needed by someone."
Welcome to An Apple a Day, a podcast, a resource, a community. Share your experiences and learn from others as we overcome barriers and learn to live a happy, healthy life with a disability. Welcome to the community. Here's your host, Jimmy Apple.
Welcome to another episode of An Apple a Day. I'm your host, Jimmy Apple. How you feeling today, my friends? You feeling good? You feeling strong? You feeling better than you did yesterday? Excellent. Hey, what about you guys that just said you aren't feeling better than you did yesterday? What's holding you back? What is holding you back? Is it the weather? Is it your attitude? Is it somebody else's attitude? What's holding you back? Think about that. You should be feeling better than you did yesterday. Today's a new day. Every day, even if it's just a little bit, a minutia, just a tad, you should feel a little bit better each day. Whether it's a breath of fresh air, maybe you're seeing things a little bit clearer, maybe you hear things a little bit better, maybe that ache doesn't hurt as much as it did yesterday. Something. Every day you should feel a little bit, an inch, a pinch, just a little bit better. You have to try. You have to let yourself feel better. Try. Write it down. Think about the reason why you're not feeling better. And don't say, "Oh, because I hurt." There has to be a reason that you're hurting. Maybe the reason is you're not sleeping enough. Maybe you're sleeping the wrong way. Maybe you're not eating right. Maybe you're eating junk food. Pizza for breakfast is not breakfast. You know what I'm saying? Ice cream for dinner is not dinner. You have to eat right. You have to get your rest. You have to get fresh air. You have to get off the couch if you can. I'm not saying if you're crippled, you have to get off the couch because that's only going to put you on the floor. But you have to get off the couch. Even if you're in the wheelchair, wheel out to the front door. Get some fresh air in your lungs. Open the windows. I know it's getting chilly out, but let some cold air get into your lungs. You have to start feeling better, my friends. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a miracle cure, but you have to feel a little bit better each day. It's important. It's important for all of us, myself included. Sometimes you just feel like bleh. I don't know how to spell that, but bleh. You feel like bleh. You have to get over that. That's one of those obstacles that we have to get over on a regular basis. And the only way we can do that is moving around a little bit, building up a positive attitude. And one of the easiest ways to do that is through a little bit of exercise. Now, I'm not talking about going out and running a 5-mile run or anything like that, but just moving around a little bit, walking a little bit, even if it's just inside your house or your apartment, getting some fresh air. Open the windows, breathe deep, breathe in the air from outside. Just something. Don't just sit and become a couch potato in front of a TV or in front of a computer. Move around a little bit. Go out on the front porch or on the front stoop or on the front sidewalk or the back porch, whatever. Get out of your house a little bit. Just stand outside or sit outside. Let the sun hit your face a little bit. But don't just become a plant inside your house. I'm not saying you have to go anywhere. I mean, we still have to worry about COVID and all this other nonsense. But don't let the stagnant air get stagnant inside of you. Move around a little bit. That's all. Get the blood flowing. Even if you just do exercises in place. Shake your hands, shake your feet or your foot, whatever you have, shake it. Shake it. Get moving. Talk to people. Get on the computer and talk to people. Don't become stagnant. And you'll see, that'll help you feel better. Socializing will help you feel better. Get on the phone. Call a friend. Call a family member. Call somebody just to talk. Don't live inside yourself. It's very important. Don't live inside yourself and don't live in the past. Live in the present. Okay? That's just my suggestion for today. Anyhow, we have got a good one for you today. We have with us Victoria Mavis. She is the author of a book called Every Scar Tells a Story. Now, when I tell you this is a good book, this isn't just a good book. This is a great book. This isn't a woe is me book. This book tells the story of Victoria's life, but it's told through a fictional version. It's not her telling you, this happened to me and this. She uses fictional characters, and there's a message in the book that's unbelievable. When I first received the book and I was asked about, if we wanted to interview her and everything, and I read the book and I was confused a little bit because I was expecting a book about Victoria. And what I got was a book with characters in it. And it was a book that I couldn't put down. It was an interesting story. Whether you're disabled or you're not disabled, it'll blow you away, this book. I have to say that. And Victoria herself, once you meet Victoria, you'll see why this book will blow you away. I want to give you a little information on Victoria herself before we even jump into this. I have a little bit of information about her, so I want to share that with you before we jump into the interview. So sit back, relax, and listen to this for a second.
Who is Victoria Mavis? Victoria Mavis is an author, speaker and HR professional who suffered a tragic accident at the young age of 4 that left her with a lifelong disability. Within a year of her accident, she would be the first physically handicapped child to enter a school system that was not equipped physically or culturally for her special needs. She was a pioneer for equality of treatment in an era when people who were handicapped were considered social misfits that should be institutionalized, were openly ridiculed and discriminated against for access to public systems. Victoria paved the way for others who didn't fit in, long before the Americans with Disabilities Act was ever proposed, or before bullying was a community epidemic to resolve. Mavis grew professionally and thrived in a world where her handicap was the pink elephant in the room. She is now pursuing a future of giving back by continuing to develop programs for disability agencies, educational institutions and healthcare providers to help individuals with disabilities gain an independent lifestyle through whatever means they are impassioned by. She has published her debut book, Every Scar Tells a Story, a fictionalized account of her life living with a disability and journey to triumph. This book, Every Scar Tells a Story, is an easy read and will appeal to all, whether you have a disability or not. There is a positive message in this book for everyone. I'll pass this back to Jimmy now so that he can introduce us to Victoria Mavis.
Well, that's some bio, but let me tell you something. What it doesn't tell you is that Victoria is a warm and kind and funny person, and she's dedicated to her work. And that's shown in just how long it took to write this book. I'm not going to tell you. I want you to hear it in the interview. So listen for that, okay? So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Victoria Mavis. She is a wonderful person, a wonderful author, and a new friend of the show here. So sit back, relax, and let me introduce you to Victoria Mavis. Okay, we're here today with Victoria Mavis, and she is the author of Every Scar Tells a Story. She co-wrote this book with Angelo Sinisi. No, not Gary, Angelo. And she is a speaker, an author, and a human resources expert. How you doing today, Victoria?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for asking.
This book was a huge undertaking. Tell us, how did you come up with the book, first of all? Tell us.
A great question.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Great question. No, sorry for jumping in. It's a great question because I never dreamed of being an author. I mean, that was not in my wheelhouse of what I was going to do. But as I get older and went out into areas where, I maybe was with a new employer or new people and not in people with people who had grown up with me, I realized I had a story to tell that could maybe affect the way people feel about themselves. And when you say it's a huge undertaking, it was a lot huger than what I thought, because when we started, the whole idea of writing a book was 10 years before it was published. So it was truly one of those kind of, you don't know what to do or what you're going to face until you get like 3 steps in, and it's like, oh my.
I'll tell you what, you guys did one heck of a job on this, because this is a real page turner. You start reading this book, and it's one of those books that you don't want to put down once you start reading. It's like every book, when you first open it up and you start reading, you go, oh, this is a little bit slow. But then as you get into it, it's not so slow anymore. And as a disabled person myself, I can relate to this book unbelievably so. I don't know how to explain it. And I'm not blowing smoke because I have you on the line and I had the book in front of me. But it's just that type of book. It reaches out and it grabs you. Now, you made a 1,600-mile trek, or Liz, I should say, in the book. She made a 1,600-mile trek to catch up with her past.
Yeah.
And like I said, it grabs me. Now, I do have a question about this, though. She was adopted.
Yes, she was adopted at the age of 4.
Now, did she ever know her birth parents?
She did, and that was complicated, and that caused, in many respects, that in her case, that opened Pandora's box, because her adopted family, she got adopted after her accident. She got adopted, but her sister didn't. And her sister was only 18 months older than she was. And even though they hung out together, were in, if you will, a foster care situation together, there was a divide when it actually came to the adoption. So going back to her birth parents, the people who adopted her, who she later always calls mom and dad, because they were her parents, really, they decided that because Liz was old enough to remember her have a memory, it wasn't fair to not allow her family to see her if they chose. And parts of her family chose to see her, and parts of her family chose not to see her.
Wow.
And as a kid growing through that, that was confusing. It was really confusing.
And was this started the trek going back to her past?
I think it's always been the track of going back to her past, because when I look at, and appreciate it, even though we talk about Liz is truly my life from a very early age. But when we talk about that, there was always an unrest with Liz, because she had so many unanswered questions that even though she tried to get them answered, tried to think through it, tried to remember, tried to ask people, she never really got her questions answered until she was like later in life and couldn't hide from it anymore. Because the crux of what kept her trapped in the past was like this mystery that she had to solve. And once she solved the mystery of the past, it's like, oh wow, gosh. Then she got the freedom and freedom and peace in her, I guess you'd say, in her soul, to be able to move beyond what happened in the past.
That makes sense, actually, because how can you move forward if you're still stuck in the past, right?
Yeah, and she was stuck. I was stuck. I always say that. But in living with a disability, I'm sure you can appreciate this. Mm-hmm. But from the earliest stages, Liz or me, remember, people would come up to me, strangers, and say, "Hey, what's wrong with your leg? Yeah. Hey, what happened? Hey, what happened to you?" And I'm like, we have to go over this again, And yet, every time she was asked that question, it took her back to the accident, which she never reconciled. And so even though she wanted so hard and so much to escape the past, with every new person she met, it just rewound itself.
Mm-hmm. That's right. You have to relive it. Every person that has a disability knows that feeling. You have to relive it almost every day.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. And I think they mean well when they ask you.
I think they do.
I think
some of them didn't, and they, a couple of them were called out in the book, by some of the snarky comments that Elizabeth makes. But for the most part, I think what it is that they don't know what to do with that.
Right.
When someone says what happened, and you say, "Oh, gee, I had an accident and I fell on my head, and I was unconscious and I was left paralyzed, and and all that, the rest of the story. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's a big thing. What do you do with that?
Right.
And
You're dumbfounded then. Like,
that's right.
where do you go?
And as somebody who may be a casual acquaintance or stranger or even a good friend, it's like, oh my gosh, they just are overwhelmed. And so I think in Liz's case, not only did she repeat it, or relive it, as you said, as everyone with a disability, she finally saw that the way she retold the story to other people stopped them in their tracks from getting past her horror. And part of the goal of writing the book was one of the original ideas was just, I had this one idea one day. I'm like, I'm going to just take a tape recorder, record what happened, and every time someone asks me what happened, I'm going to play the recorder because I know you're going to ask. And when she got to the point of how she could tell that story and have peace with the story in her heart, it landed very differently with the people she then told what happened to. She also learned really, Angelo pointed this out. Angelo is my co-author. Sometimes we call him Ange. But Ange pointed out very early in the writing process, he says, Victoria, you don't have to tell people the whole story.
Right.
What you choose to tell them is your choice. So figure out what version you want to tell, and live with that. And so that took, that was a huge shift in mindset because, I grew up having to always tell the truth. That's what I learned. Got to tell the truth, got to have full disclosure.
Right.
And I knew nothing other than that not my whole entire life, but until kind of we went on the book journey. So I thank Angelo for every time he kicked me, and say, he actually kicked me, but prodded and would ask difficult questions. I'm like, I don't want to answer that. He goes, but you have to. I don't care maybe you don't have to answer it to me, but you need to answer it to yourself. And so that was very much a part of her journey.
I learned after a short time, because I'm missing a leg.
Okay.
And people would come up to me and they'd say, "Oh, you lost it in war?" No.
Oh, yeah.
No. How'd you lose your leg? And that's a very personal question, really. And in the beginning, I'd go through the whole thing. I had Charcot diabetes, da-da-da. And I tell them. But after a while, that story got to me.
Yeah.
So now when people ask, how did you lose your leg? I cut myself shaving.
I like that.
And
I like that.
I just leave it like that, and I roll away,
Yeah.
And I just learned, and either they're going to laugh at it, or they're going to think I'm a moron, or whatever. I don't care what they think anymore. Because that's a personal question to ask someone. If I seen you in the street, and you're walking with a crutch, it's none of my business why you're walking with a crutch.
Yeah, I think we need to teach that in school.
Honestly.
I don't mean it to be hard on the academic system, but, I lived with it from kindergarten on. And the kids were relentless.
Oh.
And not that adults were much better, but if you learn that as a child, you're always going to do that. And if they don't say something, then they just stare rudely, or whisper, behind your back.
I can remember when I first I had my leg amputated twice, once below the knee and once above the knee. And when I first had it done below the knee, I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to go out of the house. My wife finally taught me to go out of the house, talked me into going out. And we went to a Ruby Tuesdays restaurant. I remember this like it was yesterday. And I had the below the knee, and naturally when you sit down, your pants go up a little bit. And this little kid kept on walking by and looking at my leg. And he seen the rod. I mean, you couldn't miss it. And I got up to use the restroom, and the kid came into the restroom with his father. And he's now you would think the father would know better. He's going, look at his leg. Look at his leg.
Oh my gosh.
And the father's laughing. And I just left. I said to my wife, I said, we got to go. The father should have known better, should have corrected him. And he's coming over, trying to pull my pants leg up as I'm washing my hands. And I said, please stop. You know, it was just embarrassing.
You're a lot kinder than I think I would have been.
Yeah, well,
But,
I think I wanted to smack the father in the mouth. But I didn't want to do that in front of his son. But it's just, I think you're right. I think it should be taught in school. And you know, the most neglected minority in this world are disabled people.
Yep.
You know, it's like you can't say anything to this group, you can't say anything to that group, you can't do this to that group. But when it comes to the disabled people, have at it. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know, you have a handicapped parking space, park there. Don't worry about it. That's one of my pet peeves. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that.
No, I can fully support that. And I've always said that. It's just like in this dates me, but when you talk about like in the 90s, and even the early 2000s, women talking about breaking the glass ceiling at work. Well, what about people with disabilities? They don't even get to see the glass ceiling.
Exactly.
You know, and I forget, there was a quote, and I forget how it went, but it was something, and I'll have to look it up, but something about it's not, you know, for people with disabilities, it goes beyond, you know, inclusion is not just, hey, let me make room for your wheelchair at the table, right. You know, and having a voice, and being able to sit there. It's having a voice, and a voice that's respected without any condition of disability, without anyone even thinking that, oh gosh, we better clear the space, you know, or we treat them differently. And so that I believe there's a lot of work that not only has to happen in schools, but it has to happen with employers, you know. And I worked for 40-some years, and you know, it was always came up, one way or another, always came up. You know, I was fortunate to have some very good career opportunities, but yet I remember seeing some that I really wanted, but the door was closed, and I could tell the only reason the door is closed is because I walk funny.
Right. Well, how many times in your business, in your line of work, have you seen people say, "Well, no, we'll go with someone else," for no other reason than the fact that they're disabled, that the person
thousands, yeah.
Then the person's disabled. I've seen it myself. It's disgusting. And if you did that with any other group, you'd be dragged into court.
Yeah, and that's where color blindness needs to be for all people.
Exactly.
You know, I think the book, you know, D'Angelo pointed this out, got me thinking, you know, we really all everybody has a disability.
Exactly.
Just with you and I, it's a little more apparent than somebody who has a bad temper or who is, you know, emotionally closed off or just is stupid because they're stupid. Right. Not because of an intellect, but because they choose bad choices. And, you know, I don't want to say the good thing, but the thing I'm blessed with is at least I know what I have to work on. Right. You know, where some people, where what holds them back in life is invisible. They're like, they don't realize it because they have a snarky, you know, way of grading people. That's what holds them back from getting a job.
Exactly.
Or getting fired every 6 months. So that part, you know, and I think that's one thing I was taught early on is, although I didn't see my disability as a gift, I always tried to look at the world in an optimistic way. And you and I both know that, given what we've been through, that's some days hard.
Exactly.
But I still, to this day, try to look at a situation and say, oh, there's got to be some good that comes out of this.
It's got to be a silver lining somewhere.
Yeah.
No, you know, it's funny because everyone I speak to, and I speak to quite a few people with disabilities, everyone always has the same thing to say. You have to try a little bit harder. Except for the people, now there's always the other side too, with people with disabilities. Some people just give up. And yeah. I have no patience for them, to be honest with you.
Well, I believe it comes, you know, and the book is tried to portray this, and this is maybe why it took me 10 years to write it, is I had to see my life from being not just a blessing, but how am I not a victim? How am I victorious over my life rather than a victim to what happened? And, what I see in people, and it's kind of what you're alluding to, and it's a great point, Jimmy, is that people so much give up and they blame the world, they blame their parents, they
Right.
blame whoever, and they become a victim, and they're really not, because I truly believe we all have a choice in how we respond to any situation.
Exactly.
And you and I can't necessarily know what that choice is going to lead to, but what we can do is make a choice that leads us in one that allows us to be victorious.
Well, I always say everybody is allowed to have a pity party.
Okay.
Everybody. I know I did it. I'm sure you did it.
Oh, yeah.
You go through a period where woe is me. And if you don't do it, you're not human, I don't think. But there comes a time that it gets late and the party has to end.
So the million-dollar question is, how long can you have the party?
The party has to end somewhere, and you have to stop, and you have to look around and say, okay, party's over. Now what am I going to do?
Sure.
You can't have that party forever. And there comes a time where people around you are going to say, well, I'm tired of this party. And you're going to wonder why people around you start to disappear too. I don't ever want to be looked at as, here comes Jimmy, the guy in the wheelchair. I want to be looked at as, here comes Jimmy.
Right.
And I don't understand how some people want to be disabled. And I don't mean it like that, but that's, I guess it sounds that way. But some people seem to want to be disabled.
Well, is it, let me be the devil's advocate, is it they want to be disabled, or they want one of two things? Not to have to work, or they want everyone to feel sorry for them?
I think that's one and the same.
Yeah.
They don't want to work.
Because I really didn't want to be disabled.
I didn't want to be disabled, that's for sure.
No, I'm not always the toughest worker, the hardest worker, but, I didn't ask for what I had. And that sounds terrible. And I know you didn't either, but life says, hey, guess what? We're giving this blessing to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when I look at who I am, had that accident not happened, I can dream of a million other ways my life would have ended or led, but I don't think any of them would have made me the same person I am today.
No, there's a reason for everything. Look at you. You had the accident, but there's a reason. You see, look what you've done. You've inspired people through your speeches and your talks. You're an inspiration to people. You're inspiring people. Believe me, with this book. I'm sure it's already done amazing things for people, and it's going to continue to do amazing things for people. This is a book, but this book has to get into other people's hands. Mm-hmm. It honestly does, because just the story itself is an inspiration as far as I'm concerned. And I'm going to tell. Well, we're telling people about it now. We have quite a few subscribers, and I'm going to make sure they hear about this. But
thank you.
This book itself, plus the fact that you're working with healthcare providers and education institutions and so on. Of course, what you're doing, maybe you wouldn't be doing that if you didn't get hurt.
Right.
You might be doing something else, but you didn't let it stop you. There's people that get hurt, and it's like they put on the brakes. Boom. They hit a brick wall, and that's where they stay. They think because they're told they have a disability that it's time to lay down and their life is over.
Yeah.
That's what bothers me. And that's one of the reasons that, like, we do the podcast here, we do the website, we do the Facebook pages. You got to learn the disability. There's obstacles in front of you, but you have to learn how to get around those obstacles. You have a disability, your life doesn't stop. I don't care what kind of disability you have, whether it's a broken finger or a broken body. There's ways to get around every obstacle, and you know that.
Yeah.
And you're showing people how to do that. That's why I think you're really an inspiration. this book alone is an inspiration.
I think one of the, since it's been out and, it was released late last year. And then after that, I mean, it's released on a Friday. And then I go into surgery the following Monday. And so I had this whole 6 months of recovery from surgery. But being able to now get back to talking to people about it and get in the reaction, I think the biggest thing I've seen is that people who are, you and I would otherwise call them normal, are coming up and saying, oh my gosh, because that they're finding a connection with the book that allows them to tap into whatever is holding them back.
Exactly.
And in fact, a friend of mine the other day read it, and she's a neighbor, and we were talking, and I gave her a copy of the book. I said, here, just read it. And she's like, I would look at her and say, I don't see any issues. And then she goes, I got to give it to my daughter. She goes, my daughter just has so much stuff going on that she can't figure out. And she says, kind of forgetting her company, but she goes, if you can get over it, she can. Well, and so that's why I do see it resonating with people, yes, with disabilities, but goes beyond that and says, hey, how do we treat other people?
Exactly. Well, people are reading this book because I don't know if you've looked on Amazon lately.
No, I haven't.
Well, I looked on Amazon today. There's only 8 left right now. It says more coming. So
we like that.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. But it says it on Amazon today. More coming. There's only 8 left, and one for resale. One used for resale.
Okay.
So
one thing that the other feedback I got with people is that, especially educators or maybe counselors or somebody who's maybe working with individuals or seeing the book as more let's have a book study club. Let's have a book study discussion. So what I did after prompting, and more than one person said that to me, I went through and kind of outlined each chapter what I thought were discussion points and threw it on the website and said, hey, you want a group discussion? Here you go. Add your own questions, but here's just some to start with, and then reference the page that you could find it at. So if someone did find themselves in it helped my daughter, or it might help my granddaughter, or maybe the person I'm working with, they can take that and then also have the study guide to help have a focused discussion from the book rather than from, here, let me talk about your leg,
right.
kind of discussion.
That would be an excellent idea on Zoom, actually.
Oh, got it.
That would be an excellent idea. Have a virtual book club.
I'm writing that one down. That's a great idea.
And discuss it on Zoom. You can get dozens of people together like that.
Yeah, great idea. Thank you.
Now, I have another question for you.
Sure.
It says you're developing programs for disabled agencies, disability agencies and education institutions and healthcare providers to help disabled people gain an independent lifestyle through art.
Yes.
How does that work?
Well, I've done a lot of, my friends call it crafty, I call it work. And what I did when I recently relocated back to Michigan, but what I did when I was in Arkansas, I used to invite people over. We'd have whether it was at my house or it was at a community hall, and I just bring a bunch of supplies and say, okay, we're going to make something today. Maybe it's something with cut glass, maybe it's something with beads, maybe it's painting, and you can just paint your little heart out. But it's trying to get them to see that there's other skills that they have. It took me, I always wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a lot of things, but, and this had nothing to do with my disability, but when I was in kindergarten, the teacher told me, I made a tree and she put a big X on it and says, that's not the way you make a tree. I had ever since
that's great for a kindergartner.
That's right. And ever since then, I told myself I can't draw.
Uh,
And and so probably about 3 years ago, I started taking up painting.
Very
And
nice.
so I'm looking at organizations, and as I have conversations with them, make suggestions for other activities other than just sit in a room and talk. Let's because it's easy to do something that people feel that they can contribute. They can have there are no boundaries on what they make. In fact, out of this, it wasn't because I did it, but I read an article about a year ago about a young lady with a disability that her parents had bought her a bunch of beads, and she was selling jewelry.
Excellent.
And I'm like, how cool is that?
Excellent. Like I said, you're like multifaceted.
Yeah.
I don't know how you had the time for all of this. Do you still go around doing the talks, the inspirational talks?
I haven't for a while, only because I've had, some medical issues that have kept me from, being on the travel circuit.
Right.
However, I had one early this year where I was in front of a group of students that had disabilities that were getting some job skills.
Mm-hmm.
We had them all on Zoom.
Oh,
And so
excellent.
I just had a prepared presentation I made, and it was like here's the top 10 things I've learned. It's going to help you. And it was interesting because I think I don't want to say the day of having stand-up seminars has gone by the wayside, but definitely COVID has affected that.
COVID has affected a lot.
But I am absolutely able to respond and do like a Zoom. And like I still go back to your suggestion about having a whole book discussion on Zoom, but I've done classes that way, or if you will, presentations.
Well, I just spoke with a fellow. I just interviewed him actually. His name is Jim Gavin, and he works with developmentally disabled people and the elderly with dementia and
Yeah.
Alzheimer's, and he works with them through music.
Oh, okay.
And he started back in 2018, then the pandemic hit, and he did it all through Zoom. And
Okay.
his business has taken off. I interviewed him back when he first started, and I just interviewed him the other day. And it has taken off so well, and the people have responded so well through the Zoom. And where he was just basically based in New Jersey to begin with, he's all over the country now. He's even done work in Israel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and all through Zoom. It's amazing, and the people are responding to it. So,
Well, I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to be respected. Everyone wants to be recognized.
exactly.
And everyone wants to know that they make a difference. Whether it's on a micro level or a macro level, we all have that need to contribute, I believe.
Exactly. And on the other side of that, the people that you're working with, they want to feel the respect that you're giving them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to feel so good to have someone turn around and say, "You're doing good. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. You're doing a nice thing. You're doing excellent or something." It just feels good to have someone compliment you, because too many times people with disabilities are left like furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And like someone like you coming to speak to people that are disabled and talking to them, directly to them, not talking to their mother or father, to their spouse or to their brother or sister. You're talking to them. This book is talking to them.
Yeah.
It's not talking to their caretaker or anybody else. It's talking to them. And that makes such a big difference. Well, you know yourself as a person with a disability. It makes such a big difference when they talk to you and not talk to someone else about you.
Oh, it does. I used to be infuriated as a child because, the doctors would look at my mom and say something, and I'm like, hey.
Exactly.
But I was taught to keep my mouth shut.
Exactly.
However, I was highly offended that, hey, I don't care what your intellect level is. You can still respect a person and have a conversation that's at their level.
Exactly.
Even if it's a smile and say, how you doing today?
Well, I still get it today. I still get it today. I mean, thank God for my wife. My wife's a nurse. But
Okay.
we'll go into a doctor's office, and they'll look at me and say, "How you feeling today?" And look at my wife for an answer.
Wow.
It-
Maybe I'm going to joke with you a little bit on this. They don't do that with me only because I'm not married. I'm like, wait a minute. they just ignore it. They don't say anything.
Sometimes, well, yeah, it's not all the time, but sometimes it's, and I'm like, hello. And when my wife answers, I'll look at them, make a joke. I would say, "You didn't know I could throw my voice." You know?
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
I try to make a joke out of everything, but this, like I said, I'm just impressed with you. I'm impressed with this book. This book really, I've read books by other people, and they talk about their life, and their books are excellent.
Right.
But this here, when Megan first told me about this, I got the book and I'm reading it. I'm going, wait a minute. I thought this was about the author, and then I'm reading and going, wait a minute. Is this fictional? And the book made me think. I don't like to think sometimes. But the book made me think. But then it got to the point that I couldn't put it down. That's why I asked you when we first got on when we were first on the phone. I was like, did I miss something here? Did I lose something in this? But it's such a good book. And I recommend this book to everybody, whether you're disabled or not. I recommend this book.
Well, I would take that on behalf of my co-author and say, if it wouldn't have been for Ange always kicking the tires, because when we started, I said, I don't want to write a book if all it is about my tragedy. Because really, where do you go with that?
Right.
I mean, there is no, yeah, it's a story, it's another tragic thing. People have tears. But if I can't have a message that's tied to what I went through, I'm not going to do it. And I think that's why it took the 10 years to write it, because, the first probably 10 drafts were all about, drama, tragedy, but there was no learnings that came from it. And Angelo kind of forced me into looking at hard parts of my life and saying, again, you don't have to tell me, but you got to figure this out. You have this disability, and he's one person that when I was a consultant, I called on him. He was assistant superintendent of a school at that point. Mm-hmm. And I called on him and pitched him on the idea of I would do a communication class for his people, with all his teachers in the school district. And we did that. He never once asked me about my disability. He never once kind of flagged it out there. And when we started writing the book, he reminded me of that. And he said, there's something different in you because you continue to go without even thinking about the crutch, without even, it doesn't stop you. And so he really pushed me to the core to identify in myself, what was that I didn't stop, that I kept going. And that, I think, and that's really was what I wanted to make the book convey, not so much that you know it, but that you make the journey yourself. And if there's something holding you back as a reader, you're like, oh gosh, because, and there's enough stories or words or something that make you look at your life until you uncover that. And then, because when I did, that's when my life exploded. And it's like, wow, wish I'd felt this way 30 years ago.
Really? Now, your thoughts on this. So, do you believe that you have to resolve early issues in order to progress now? Do you think that's part of the healing process?
I do. And at least that's the way it worked for me. Maybe not for everybody, but here's what I did, because I didn't resolve them early. I buried them. And I buried them really deep. And so for years I would go on ignoring that these things were even an issue. And here 20, 30, 40 years later, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't dealt with this way back when. And so for me, it worked that I had to resolve that. Whether you call it a mourning process, a healing process, there was something in my past that kept the hook and kept me emotionally tied to that day at the barn. And the day at the barn is the day I had my accident and everything that revolved around it. And it really wasn't until I resolved that whole part of my journey, i.e. the 1,600 miles I traveled, to be able to be free of the past. Now, maybe it won't work that way for somebody else, but that's the way it worked for me.
Well, it makes sense. In my travels around with people here, a lot of things I hear, and I always chalk it up to people have time on their hands now, that all of a sudden they have memories that are popping up from when they were kids, that things weren't so as good as what they thought it was, or they had problems, and all of a sudden they're remembering things weren't as rosy as what they thought it was growing up. And now they're having issues with not only are they having issues what they have with the problems they have now they're having issues with things that happened in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And so you think resolving those issues that happened in the past can help them move on with stuff that's happening now?
I do. I do. I look at my leg and, let's take something really basic that, and you and I talked about it already, that every time someone asks what happens, you go back and you relive the thing,
Right.
whatever it was. What would have happened if by the age of 10, we'll give it 5 years, but by the age of 10, I had found a way that when someone asked what happened, I didn't go back into that past? How would that have changed my decisions? How would that have changed my friendships? The loves of my life that I didn't do really well with, how would that have changed it? So I truly, think that if you're burying it, that's what I call it. If you're burying it, it's only a matter of time before it's going to pop back up.
Right.
As humans, I think we're wired that you've got to either, give it, some people call it you better give it to God, whatever your version of that is. You've got to find a way to resolve that. And burying it is not the way. I personally believe, and this is truly my personal belief, that a lot of people's illness comes from their inability to keep burying the past. And I liken it to when I was my former marriage. There was one point in time I was at the age of 30. I was on the nerve of having an ulcer. Mm-hmm. Like, are you kidding me? Because I'm a fairly healthy, aside from my leg, I'm a fairly healthy woman, and always have been. And all of a sudden, when I looked at what was happening at that moment in my life and trying to ignore some of the things going on that bothered me, once I was able to resolve that, I haven't had any ulcer issues since. Excellent. So again, that's just my personal experience and my beliefs based on that.
Now, let me ask you, do you get someone that says, well, I had a problem with my father. My father was, I don't know, whatever. But how do you go back and resolve that?
Okay, so it's a great question. So I'm going to go on a little limb out here.
Okay.
And so maybe it's a big limb. So Liz, in the book, didn't have necessarily the best relations with her birth mother. And, when I look at that, that's in her relations with her father. Her birth father were non-existent. He, those are stories for another day.
Right.
But that was a part of her past that she felt bad about, and she felt she carried, if you will, she carried those bad seeds. And, take it like Liz. Liz sat there and said for years, hey, why did my parents give me up? That wasn't fair of them to give me up and I'm adopted, and you didn't give up my sister. And I don't mean give it up, but I lost a childhood with my sister because of that. I had to finally let that go and find a way to be thankful for the life my mother did give me. She gave birth to me.
Right.
And if I found nothing else to be thankful for, I can thank her for that. And that's, and I've gone to counseling, I've gone to courses, but that's the best way I found to resolve that sins of the father, if you will, the mother, is just to find, what can you be thankful for? They're not perfect. I'm not perfect, but she did give me life. And maybe whether I think it was right that she gave me up for adoption or not, I've had a very blessed life because of it. And I don't know that had they not given me up, that that it would have resulted the same way. So I can't second guess that decision, but I can go back and resolve in my heart the one thing I am thankful to them for, my birth.
That makes sense. Like I said, I've heard people tell me horror stories about their childhood, and I always put it in my mind that they have too much time on their hands.
Yeah.
And
Well,
seriously, and some of the things that I've heard, I'm like, this can't be true. But
yeah.
who am I to judge? I can't judge. I wasn't there. And I think to myself sometimes, like, if this is true, these people should be brought up on charges. Some of them.
Yeah.
But it's so many years ago. But I'm not advising anybody or anything. But sometimes they're looking for an answer, and I don't know what to tell anybody when it comes to something like that.
Well, I think the other thing, and this is one thing that I had to reconcile, is who do I choose to have a relationship with?
Mm-hmm.
And I've chosen people from my past that may have hurt me, and I say, I choose. My friend put it this way: after reading my book, and I had breakfast with him the other day. He was driving through town, and after reading the book, he said it this way: there are just some people you need to leave at the elevator.
That's really good. That's a true statement.
And when he said that, I realized, because there's a scene in the book about the elevator, and Liz choosing to leave somebody at the elevator. And I thought, wow, you're right. Because if you hurt me, say you're my father or my mother or my sibling, doesn't matter who you are, there comes a point in time I can choose to sever that relationship.
Exactly.
And that's my choice. And then how you deal with it emotionally, that's sometimes why you need a counselor. I'm not trained in that. I just know what I did.
Mm-hmm.
So there are family members that because of that, I choose not to associate with them.
Well, like they say, you can choose your friends.
Yeah.
And well, me personally, I'd rather choose my friends. But it's hard. It's hard. And like I said, I listen to some people, and sometimes I think, some people just have to sound off, and I'll listen. They'll write emails, and I'll listen. Then they'll say, "Please don't mention this on your podcast." All right, I won't. They just want to get it out of their system. Then other people, I don't know. It's heartbreaking sometimes. And then there's other people, like I said, I think they just have too much time on their hands.
Yeah. It goes back to that, and maybe the victim syndrome, where it's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
A lot easier complaining about how the world mistreated me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Victoria, I can't say enough about this book. Also, I wanted to mention your website. You have victoriamavis.com?
Yep. That you checked it out, I can tell.
Yes.
So that is, if you know anything about me, you'll know I am extremely transparent. So, and I think the book helped with that, because really once I told the story, there's nothing to hide. So a lot of times I'll put things on the website, be it a blog or something else that maybe people think is controversial. The website is the best place to find me at. Find what's going on. You can get a book there, or to your point, you can do it on Amazon. But really, what I eventually want the website to be is a way that the community comes together. It can express collective views that help all of us. Because I've got like some other author friends, one of who has written a child's book on having a disability, and I've talked to him saying, "Hey, people are on my website. They, maybe they resonate more with your story of, how you told it in your book." And so that's what I'd like the website to eventually morph into, is more a community center.
Well, I'm going to definitely put your website in the show notes for the podcast, and I'm going to put it on the Facebook page so that we can generate more people going over there.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. No, I want to make your name a household name. Like I said,
Victoria Mavis.
You know it, Victoria Mavis. And I want people to get this book in their hands, because we're very particular on who we bring on with books, because some people write books and it's a pity party.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can. We've had quite a few authors, but they're select authors, and you're one of them. This book is, again, I don't want you to think I'm blowing smoke on you or anything like that. The book is one of those books, like the other ones that we've had, that it's a page turner, and it's one of those ones like I'll be sitting in the living room reading, and my wife is going, "Dinner's on the table." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be right there," and I'm still reading. But this book is a page turner. I'm not shocked, but I'm shocked that it took you 10 years to write this. Because I was able to read it in like a week. It's just a great book. The story is good. It's I'm going to be honest with you, it's a bit of a sad story, but it's a happy story at the end, to be honest.
Thank you.
One other question, beyond I'm looking at it. These pictures on the cover, are they you?
Yep.
Are they?
That's me and my sister when that was probably, I'm just doing the math, probably 4 months before my accident.
Really? And
Yep. We were visiting the people who were about to adopt us, who were relatives of my mother, my birth mother, and we had been staying with them for a while. So we're in our little Easter dresses and our Easter bonnets, I believe. And on one of them, I think you can see my sister's holding up her basket.
Holding a basket.
Yeah, so that was us.
Cool. I meant to ask you that in the beginning, if that was you guys.
Yep, that was us. She's the one that looks smarter.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on with us today, and I really appreciate it. And I would love to have you on again.
Oh, honest, absolutely.
To be honest.
I would say this, just let me know what works for your timeline. We can have another discussion. Things, as you know, October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So I'm, when I look at what I'm talking about, part of what my world is always about, okay, what's going on in the world itself. And so whenever you might feel it's appropriate, give a shout out. I'd be more than happy to have a chat.
Definitely. And do you have anything coming up right now? Or are you just sitting back and taking a little bit easy, because you've been busy as all get?
I've been busy. Actually, I'm trying to get my condo finished, getting not repair, but getting all my stuff done in my condo. I'm like, is it winter yet?
You're working on a condo now too?
Yeah. So what I did is in April, I decided that it was time to come back home and move back to Michigan. I lived for 5 years in Arkansas, and my whole life since I was graduation really, I've spent going from one place to another for a job. So I've lived in 5 states.
Oh.
In Arkansas was the last. I'm like, well, it's time to go back to Michigan. And because of, mobility issues and other things, I didn't want to have a house anymore. And I didn't want to have the yard and all the things you got to do to keep a house up. Mm-hmm. And so I got a condo, and, so it had a lot of things it needed help on. And so the last 3 months I've done nothing other than trying to, one, do what I could do, some projects I can do, and 2, get contractors to get my condo finished. So I'm kind of at the okay, we got to get it done before the snow flies.
Oh my God.
That's kind of my thing, before the snow flies. And so I'm really, when you say what's coming up, I've been in the midst of starting to outreach to schools that I haven't been in contact with, to give them, previews of the book to see if it fits in their curriculum, or could fit into, a study structure. We did, I'm going to be pursuing the avenue of making it into a movie. I've always thought it would be a great movie.
Are you kidding me?
No, that's, so if listeners have somebody that, I've already saw the draft of what a movie might look like. And I'm like, wow. So it's those. So when you say what's coming up, it's more of getting the word out by whatever means that's appropriate. and trying to go down the avenue of having it be made into a movie.
Wow.
And I've already got people picked out that if there was a movie, who would be in there.
Well, make sure you put this part in the movie, and you can have Ryan Gosling play me.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be happy.
Well, it's interesting because I thought for people being Liz, who do I think could pull that off? And I have my favorites for years because I thought about this 10 years ago. I did put it in back burner because we got to finish the story. But someone lately came up with this, Susan Sarandon, and I'm like, oh, now that'd be an interesting. I just never, and you can make any character, almost, but it's like, who do I think could really pull that off in terms of how Liz's character is, and not just the image, but the depth in their acting, the depth in being able to, move like you have a disability. Because one thing we did when we wrote the book, it was my intent that you could walk in my shoes. And so when it was painful to try to write, how do I walk? Right. How do people see it? How would they experience it? That's not every character can pull that off.
This is true. That's such a neat idea. Make a movie.
Yeah.
You know what the best part would be? Get
one
character that one name, one well-known name, and then use disabled people.
Oh yeah, great idea.
Use like the gay people want gay people playing gay people, so use disabled people playing disabled people. It just sounds like such a neat idea, and I think it would be a very interesting movie, to be honest with you.
It's interesting. I always one of my childhood dreams, of course, I can't act, but I thought I could be an actress. And then in the early 70s, when I saw like Gunsmoke, and you had Chester on there with the limp, yep. I'm like, oh my God, I could do that part.
Chester, and who was the other one? Festus was the other.
Yes,
another
Chester
one.
and Festus.
That's right.
And so I'm like, there, and to your point, it's like, why not have disabled people? I always thought they don't need to get an actor to play that. I can play having a limp.
That's right.
Really,
There you go.
But Hollywood didn't think that way.
Oh well, you could always do this. This could be a Lifetime movie.
Oh, that's a good idea.
This could be a knockout Lifetime movie. Actually, my wife watches Lifetime all the time. She's got me hooked on them.
That's a great suggestion.
This could be a knockout Lifetime movie.
Yeah. So when you ask what's next, it's a lot of that.
You got a full plate.
I got work.
Actually, you got a shopping cart full of stuff coming up.
I do. I do.
Yeah, no, we're gonna keep in touch. We're definitely gonna. We will.
Jimmy, this has been so much fun, and it's been an honor to be on your show.
It's been an honor to have you on here. I'm blown away. I was a little bit nervous, but you've put me at ease. Thank you so much for being on here today. I really appreciate it. We're gonna make you. I'm telling you, we're gonna make your name a household name. And
I like that.
We're gonna push this book definitely.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. To me, it's not about my name. It will be my name, but it's about the story that the name represents.
Well, we're gonna push your name and Angie's name.
There you go.
And every scar tells a story. We're gonna push that out there. And I can't believe you're working on a condo too. On top of everything
else. We'll leave it at that.
Books, talks, HR expert, and a contractor. We should add that to your bio.
I was painting the other day. I got to go back. Do you know what it's like painting in a wheelchair? That's the challenge. It's like that. I got more paint on the wheelchair than I think that I got on the walls.
Now your wheelchair looks like the Partridge Family bus.
Oh, it does. Not quite the good lines, but yes.
Oh, Victoria, thank you so much again. I'd like to thank Victoria Mavis for being on the podcast today, and I'd like to remind you, get her book, Every Scar Tells a Story. It's available on Amazon, and it's available on her website, victoriamavis.com. And don't worry about it, all the websites will be in the show notes for this podcast. And I want to remind you, An Apple a Day is brought to you by www.famousapple.com. Famousapple.com is the home site for this podcast. So if you get a minute, check it out. And also make sure to stop by our Facebook page at famousapple.com/group. That's the group page is Living with a Disability. It's over at Facebook. A lot of people having conversations over there, chatting, asking questions, answering questions. They're having a lot of fun. So stop by famousapple.com/group. And I want to thank you, the listener, for being here today and being here all the time. So be here for the next episode. We're going to have a lot of fun. There's a lot of good things coming up. And I want to remind you, no one ever went blind by looking at things from the bright side. So give it a shot. Hey, you've been listening to An Apple a Day. My name is Jimmy Apple, and I'll talk to you next time. Have a great day, my friends.
Thanks for listening to An Apple a Day with Jimmy Apple, your gateway to a happy, healthy life. Join our community at www.famousapple.com. See you next time.